All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Imagine just for a second that you are playing a high-stakes game every single day. The board? Well, that's the global economy. The playing pieces are your hard-earned dollars. And there are these invisible forces constantly making moves in the background, just waiting to take a piece of your pie. Now, most people out there are playing this game completely blindfolded. But today, we're taking that blindfold off. We're going to master the rules of the game. Because once you actually understand the systems that govern taxes, banking, interest, and credit, you can take this whole seemingly rigged system and turn it to your immense advantage. So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The cost of civilization. 2. The truth about banking. 3. Interest, inflation, and recessions. 4. Mastering your credit score. And finally, 5. Investing for wealth building. Let's get right into it. Before we even talk about keeping your money, we really have to understand what it actually is. And the wild truth here is that money isn't inherently real. Humans just kind of invented it to make trading easier and to help organize society. I mean, think about it. There is virtually no physical difference in legitimacy between a paper dollar bill and, say, a wooden stick you find in your yard. The only reason that dollar bill can buy you groceries and the stick can't is because we as an entire society have built a shared belief and trust that the dollar is actually worth something. It is entirely a social construct. Crazy, right? Okay, moving to part 1, the cost of civilization. Where exactly does the money go? Picture this for a second. You just slaved away for a grueling month at work, let's say flipping burgers at your local McDonald's. You get an email saying you've been paid $2,000. Awesome! But then you check your bank account and only $1,456 actually hits it. Where did it go? Well, it went to those invisible forces we talked about, taking from different buckets. There's income tax, which hits the money you make, sales tax, which hits the money you spend, capital gains tax, taking a cut of the money your investments make while you're literally sleeping. Then you have Social Security, which is basically the government forcing you to save for your retirement so it can pay you back later. And finally, Medicare, a health insurance tax supporting older folks and people with serious health issues. This is the modern ritual of giving a chunk of your money away. And get this, they expect you to say thank you. So the crucial point to remember here is that, yeah, while taxes can be incredibly annoying, especially when the government makes you play a guessing game about how much you owe and then penalizes you if you guess wrong, they are ultimately the cost of civilization. The money you pay builds the roads we drive on, it funds the schools, and it ensures your absolute favorite taco truck isn't invested with rats. It even funds billion-dollar missiles. And the data actually shows us it isn't all bad. Countries with higher tax rates generally report a significantly higher overall quality of life. All right, let's jump to part 2. The truth about banking. You walk into a bank, you hand the cashier your money, they smile at you, and you walk out thinking your cash is sitting in some giant, impenetrable vault guarded by a fire-breathing dragon. I hate to break it to you, but that money, it's already gone. Banks are not giant safes. They're really just middlemen. They're matchmakers for financial transactions, using a system called fractional reserve banking. Here's how it works. Step 1, you deposit $1,000. Step 2, the bank keeps a tiny fraction of it on hand, let's say just $100. Step 3, they take the other $900 and immediately lend it out to some guy who wants to buy a jet ski. The bank makes its money by lending your cash out at a higher interest rate than they pay you for keeping it there. The whole shebang completely relies on the idea that not everyone is going to show up on the exact same day asking for 100% of their money back. Unless, of course, it's 2008 and everyone panics, causing the whole system to crumble. But hey, don't panic yourself. Despite this matchmaking game going on behind the scenes, banks entice you to deposit money because it's super convenient, they pay you a little bit of interest, and most importantly, it's safe. In the US, the government ensures that your bank deposits are insured up to $250,000 per person. So no matter what happens to that guy who bought the jet ski, keeping your money in the bank is infinitely safer than hiding it in a shoebox under your bed. Let's roll right into section 3, interest, inflation, and recessions. The invisible engines. So now we understand taxes and banks, but what happens to the actual value of your money while it just sits there? Well, these are the invisible engines running in the background, constantly working to make your money either grow exponentially or shrink quietly. Let's start with interest. I love this idea. Interest is simply money's way of charging rent to exist in someone else's hands. When you borrow money, interest is the literal price tag for using someone else's cash. But when you lend or save money, interest is your reward for being patient and boring. Now, there are 2 distinct flavors of this rent. Simple interest is like a flat fee. Thanks for playing. But compound interest, oh man, that is where your dollars create little clones of themselves. And those clones also start demanding rent. Let me give you a quick example. If you owe 20% interest on a credit card and you miss a payment, your interest starts earning interest. Suddenly, that $12 burrito you bought at 2 a.m. turns into a $50 financial regret. On the flip side, though, if you're investing at a 7% annual compound interest rate, your money duplicates itself like a literal video game cheat code. $100 becomes $200, then $400, and one day you wake up old, rich, and feeling pretty smug about it all. Interest is either your absolute worst enemy or your very best unpaid employee. But wait, there is another force at play here: inflation. Imagine buying a bag of chips, opening it up, and realizing it's already half-eaten. Yet you somehow paid 30% more for it than you did last time. That is inflation. It's the slow, quiet erosion of your money's value. Your $5 bill is still technically a $5 bill, but it buys fewer instant noodles and less gas than it did just a year ago. Why does this happen? Well, sometimes everybody has cash, and they all want the exact same limited stuff, like 2,000 people fighting over $1,000 TVs, which just drives the price up to $800. Or supply chain hiccups make producing things way more expensive. A predictable 2% inflation is totally normal, but when it spikes, your savings basically die, and your wages really start to lag behind. And here's where it all connects. When the government tries to fight that high inflation, they raise interest rates to cool off spending. But that can sometimes trigger a recession. A recession is simply the economy shrinking for at least 6 months. Think of the economy as a massive party. During the boom phase, years 1 through 4, everyone is dancing, having a great time. At the year 5 peak, the lights start to flicker a bit. Then hits the bust. Suddenly layoffs happen, the stock market drops, and the DJ is just playing sad lo-fi beats about corporate downsizing. But listen, recessions aren't forever. They are painful, mandatory system resets. Eventually the government steps in, people start buying overpriced coffee again, businesses rebuild, and the growth resumes. On to Section 4. Mastering your credit score, the ultimate trust algorithm. So how do you actually navigate this wild economic party? You need credibility. Your credit score is essentially this shadowy algorithm that knows your name, your entire history, and exactly how many times you paid your credit card late back in college. This algorithm spits out a 3-digit number, ranging from 300 to 850. Now let's be clear, this number isn't about how wealthy you are. It is purely a measure of trust. Lenders look at this number to answer one single question: if I give this person money, will they actually pay me back? If your score is below 580, you're considered a walking red flag, and you're gonna get slapped with soul-crushing interest rates. But if you're over 750, you literally sparkle with adult credibility, and you get the absolute best rates on houses and cars. To actually control this score, you have to understand how the game is scored. It looks at your credit mix, your new credit applications, your credit age, and your credit utilization, which is basically how much credit you're using versus your total limit. But the absolute undisputed king of these rules is your payment history. Do you pay on time? To actually increase your score, you must make the required payments on every single loan before you enter that late period. The moment you are late, your score takes a massive hit. There's a perfect analogy from the source material for this. Your credit score is exactly like a pet dog. If you completely ignore it, it poops all over your life. But if you take care of it, if you feed it and manage it, someday it will help you buy a house. And here's a totally crazy truth. You can have absolutely zero debt and still have a trash credit score, simply because you don't have a credit history. The game is entirely about looking good to lenders. Yes, the game is rigged, but by learning these rules, you can rig it right back in your favor. Finally, Section 5, investing for wealth building, making your money actually work for you. Here we are, the grand finale. You know how to protect your money from taxes and inflation, and you know how to borrow smartly. But how do you actually win the game? This happens when your money stops sitting around being lazy and actually starts working for you. To beat inflation, you have to trade your money for more money, but you don't have to play insanely complicated financial games to do it. You just need to know the primary vehicles. Stocks are simply tiny ownership slices of companies. If the company grows, your slice gains value. Bonds are just loans you make to a government or a company, and they pay you back with interest over time. Funds are just collections of those stocks and bonds bundled together for convenience. In real estate, that's property you buy hoping someone else pays to live in it forever. But to truly understand wealth, you really have to understand value. Imagine picking up an average rock off the ground. Now imagine that rock is shiny and yellow. That's gold. Gold isn't actually worth more than a normal rock in a practical, everyday sense. It's only worth more because humans perceive it to be rarer and place a higher value on it. It's the exact same reason a Gucci bag sells for 100 times more than a Target bag made out of basically similar fabric. The perceived value is just higher. If you want to become truly wealthy, you must create massive perceived value. Steve Jobs created the iPhone, providing immense value to millions of people, and in return, people happily handed him thousands of dollars. And this brings us to the ultimate limitation every single one of us faces: time. Almost everyone starts out with a lot of time, but it's certainly not unlimited. Most people spend their lives working jobs where time is traded directly for money, 1 hour for one paycheck. It's simple math, but it's capped. The top earners in the world, they don't use magic, they use leverage. They figure out how to transition from working for money to making their money work for them, multiplying their resources over decades without having to clock in every single hour. When you look at compound growth doing its thing over a 30-year span, it is mind-blowing. In year 10, the gains are really small, almost unnoticeable. By year 20, we start seeing some solid medium growth. But look at year 30. That massive spike is where the absolute magic happens. Investing isn't about winning the lottery or being incredibly lucky. It's about being early, being diversified, and being ridiculously, unbelievably patient. Yes, the market goes up and down, but the real danger isn't losing money in a dip. The real danger is never investing at all and just watching inflation quietly steal your entire future. Wealth isn't built in days, it's built in decades. A little bit of money invested consistently over a long period of time becomes a massive fortune, allowing ordinary people with totally modest paychecks to retire with 7 figures in the bank. They didn't beat the system, they simply used the system. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. You have a very limited supply of time on this earth. Will you spend your life trading it directly for money, or will you master the rules of the game and let time multiply your wealth? The choice is entirely yours.